Hey there, welcome to the MLB DFS build. I'm Kevin Roberts from with Taylor Smith. We're going to break down this nice Tuesday night main slate over at DraftKings for MLB DFS. I apologize for my voice. Got a little bit of a cold working through it, but we are going to hopefully help you win some cash, and it'd be nice if we also did the same for ourselves. If anything we say here does help you, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. That will help us know that we're doing something right, and it'll help you get alerted to future videos. All right, Taylor, right away, let's get going here. We got the Mets hosting the Nationals. Mitchell Parker going up against the Mets. Definitely going to lean on the Mets side. Collective 169 ISO. They don't strike out. He gives up a 177 ISO to righties, so I would focus on the righties, and stacks look totally fine. Tyler McGill is carrying some ownership. He is 7.7K. In theory, he looks okay here. Nats coming in with about a 22% collective whiff rate. I don't really feel good about Miguel. I think you can. I mean, the Nats have a decent amount of power from the left side. His walk rate is 11.8% to lefties. He's given up a 158 ISO to lefties. He does have strikeout numbers that are not bad. But I don't know. I don't feel good about Miguel. I think the Mets look pretty good here. They're probably the lean I have in this game. And if Miguel is going to carry ownership, let's see where he's at. He's the third highest owned pitcher at the moment at 17%. If that holds, I actually have a little bit of interest in the Nats.
I do not. I'm not really getting to bats in this game. It's a bad park for offense. The Mets, I think Lindor's hurt, so the lineup's a little bit watered down at the moment. I do have a lot of interest in McGill just because he is cheap and facing Washington. He's not my favorite pitcher in the 8K range. We'll get to him in a minute. It's going to be a lot lower owned. But I think McGill's totally fine. I don't mind looking his way just because he is cheap and not a bad pitcher overall. And the bats look like a fade. Mitch Parker, not even in my player pool, so I guess I'm fading him as well.
Yeah, it's not like there's really leverage to be had with the Mets. I just think if you're going to target an offense here, the Mets do stand out, and they grade out pretty well by the numbers. But yeah, I agree. Not a priority, but I think they're okay. And really, the Nats, it would just be a leverage play. If you're not really feeling McGill and you want to get some leverage, I think the Nats are okay. But again, not a priority. We got the Athletics visiting Wrigley Field. Do you know if the wind is blowing out?
I don't think it is.
Okay. So obviously that is a big deal. I'm just going to naturally be a little bit less interested in a game at Wrigley. That said, Mitch Spence takes on the Cubs. They have a collective 165 ISO and a 22% whip rate. Not super interested in him. I think the Cubs are okay. Jordan Wicks on the other side. This has me liking the Athletics. I'd like them a little bit more if the wind was blowing out, but actually, considering the slate and the fact that the wind is not blowing out, I think I actually do like the Athletics more than I would because they're not going to be as owned. So Wicks gives up a 171 ISO to righties, and they have a lot of good righties. 216 ISO collectively for Oakland. They do strike out a little bit, so you definitely can play both sides of this one, but I really like Oakland, especially if they're going to get a little overlooked here because the wind's not blowing out.
Yeah, the thing I'm getting to the most in this one is Wicks. I think it's only because he's 6,300 on DK, and he's not terrible. He got taint lit up by the Dodgers in his last start. I think he gave up 3 homers in the first inning.
So why wouldn't you like the Athletics here?
Well, it's one fucking game against the Dodgers, and the A's are not the Dodgers. So I think Wicks is an okay cheapie. There's not really a lot of cheap pitching. I think the cheap pitcher du jour is going to be Canning. So if you're just looking to get different, I think Wicks is completely fine. The matchup is okay. Like you said, the wind isn't really helping either the pitching or the hitting in this game. So it's just kind of a cheap dart throw. Not getting to the bats on either side. Certainly not getting to Mitch Spence either against the Cubs.
Yeah, I like the logic with Wicks. I think after you get past like the top 2 guys on the slate, it's really split. There's a ton of guys with 10% ownership or more, and Wicks is one of those guys. So it will be interesting to see over the course of the day how that fluctuates. With the wind not blowing out, I would guess that Wicks' ownership, because he's only 6.3K and he feels a little bit better than Canning, to be honest. I would guess his ownership ticks up. So that would have me like Athletics even more. So we're kind of parting ways, fork in the road here. I like the Athletics a lot, but I also am okay with Wicks at 6.3K with the wind not blowing out. Moving on, we got the Phillies and the Brewers in Milwaukee. Zach Wheeler taking on the Brewers. Frankie Montas taking on the Phillies. So obviously the Phillies, it's a little bit of a park downgrade, but they still have a 184 collective ISO. They don't strike out that much. And they have a lot of good lefties, and that's what Frankie struggles with. So the Phillies look pretty good. On the other side, don't really want to chase the Brewers here. They do have some power. If they get on base, they can get some steals. But Wheeler's a good pitcher. I don't know. I guess he's going to be owned. Let's see. His ownership is coming in. He's second most owned pitcher on the slate, 21% about. So it's a leverage play. But other than that, I'm not super eager to play the Brewers. I think it's mostly Phillies for me here.
Yeah, it's mostly Wheeler for me. Most expensive pitcher on the board. He's just been great. He's got a long leash. The Phillies are still in the playoff hunt, of course, so I don't see any reason they would limit him or anything right now. Matchup's not great. Like the Brewers are a pretty good offense. It is a pretty good park for power, but
put some respect on their name.
Without a lot of like amazing, obvious pitching, I think Wheeler is great at 10-5. There's enough value, like we've mentioned with Wicks and others, to squeeze him in pretty easily. The Phillies do look good too. Montas has been particularly bad against lefties on the season. The Phillies obviously have a couple of them at the top in Schwarber and Harper that are pretty imposing. Toward the bottom, Marsh, Stott, and Cal Stevenson are okay values. So not a good, like Montas is cheap enough to where you can play him, I think. It's just not a very appealing matchup. Generally picking on the Phillies is not my cup of tea. So I do agree with you that the Phillies are the way to go as far as bats in that game.
Yeah, worth noting, by the way, Wheeler's walk rate spikes by like 7%, switching from right to left. So the Brewers don't have a ton of really imposing lefties, but they, as a whole, do get on base pretty well. So that could be something to look out for if they, if he gets into walk problems in this matchup. But yeah, it's just a leverage play for sure. Royals and Tigers. Casey Mize takes on the Royals here. So Royals look pretty decent. I have no problem with them. Collective 169 ISO. They don't strike out that much. So I certainly would not be playing Casey Mize, and they look pretty good. Cole Reagans on the other side is the play. I prefer him to Wheeler by quite a bit. He has a good whiff rate against righties specifically, and the Tigers are coming in with a nice collective ISO. It's boosted a little bit by Dingler there. No, it's not. I'm sorry. Who is it? Sweeney boosts them a little bit, not a 14 plate appearances. But they have a 28% collective whiff rate. So I think everything looks pretty good here for Cole. He's only $700 less than Wheeler. So I just think he is going to be chalky. He's an ISO pitcher on the board, but I think he's my favorite one.
I'm not getting to as much Reagans as I thought I would. I might boost his projection a bit just to get a little more, but the Royals are one of the better offenses on the slate. Mize has never really panned out, even though he was, I think, the number one pick in the draft several years ago. Casey's just a good offense. Not the best hitting environment, but I think they're a perfectly fine stack. I don't think Detroit is a bad leverage play against Reagans either. He will allow some power to righties. Like you said, they do have some impressive power numbers against lefties. Even Riley Green is hitting lefties pretty well. So no one's going to play them. It's the most obvious leverage play on the slate. I think I'd rather, well, maybe not. Maybe the White Sox are the obvious leverage on the slate, but we'll get there. But yeah, I don't mind Detroit just because Reagans has been good, but he's going to be quite chalky. So I don't mind looking at the Tigers.
Yeah, I just think he and Wheeler are both going to garner similar ownership numbers. So if that's the case, I'll just take the cheaper guy facing the worse offense. So I mean,
he's rather stack against Reagans than stack against Wheeler, I think.
I don't know. I always am game for it just because that is where the instant leverage is. I just don't really love either spot for leverage on this slate. Reagans,
you don't have to do it. Like it's a big enough slate where you certainly don't have to play those teams. But
yeah, if you don't like Cole, you can just play Wheeler with I don't know, Canyon or Wicks or something. You just hope Cole doesn't do great, but then don't take put all your eggs in one basket with the Tigers. So hey, he's averaged 30 fantasy points per game across 2 meetings with the Tigers, so he kind of owns this matchup. I don't really have any concerns with this matchup for him. I love him. So that's my flag plant at pitcher. Not like I'm going out on a limb here, but I like him a lot, and I'm going to play him instead of Wheeler personally. Not that I want to get you off Wheeler. Wheeler's been really good. So you can play him if you want. All right, next game we have the Pirates against the Cardinals in St. Louis. Bailey Falter taking on the Cardinals. Bailey Falter is not somebody we really want to play because he does not have any strikeout upside. The Cardinals, their ISO is boosted quite a bit by this guy right here. And up here, Luke and Baker. So I don't know if I'd read too much into that, but they don't strike out really, and it's a pitcher park. So I'm not super interested in them, even though Bailey Falter is not somebody to fear. On the other side, Lance Lynn, as usual, we can target him with lefties and stack against his old geriatric self if we want to, but the Pirates aren't really the best offense to stack in general. And like I said, it's a pitcher park. So I think either pitcher is fine, but I don't love either of them, and I don't really want the offenses either.
Yeah, this game looks like pretty much a stay away.
Yep.
I think the tournament, he's somewhat cheap, and he pitched well in his last outing. Pirates are a good offense either, and the park's fine. So it's like an open play. But there's enough other pitching in that range or cheaper to where I don't think he's a priority at all.
Yep. All right, we got the Jays against the Rangers. Chris Bassett taking on Texas. Texas, obviously, as you noted last time, is without Corey Seager, so they are not nearly as imposing, even though they really haven't been that great all year anyways. Collective 136 ISO. Again, not anything to be afraid about. They don't strike out that much, about 21%. But I think Bassett's an okay play here. What's his price? 8.1. I think that's okay. Not really somebody I'm racing to play, but I think if you get him in that lower 8, high 7 range, that's fine. Like a nice tournament pivot off of McGill, possibly. Nathan Eovaldi going up against the Jays. They have a collective ISO of 171, but he's usually pretty safe. His price at 9.2 sounds fair. He's not a priority for me, but again, he looks like a decent tournament play if you want to get a lower owned option and save a little bit of money. But yeah, I'm not feeling anything here. I don't really think the offenses are in an advantageous spot, but the pitchers are good enough and not owned to the point where I would consider them and leave them in my player pool for sure.
Yeah, Eovaldi I like. He's just kind of expensive at 9.2, and he's like a slightly above average strikeout guy. It's a below average strikeout matchup. Toronto doesn't strike at all. So I think he's playable. I will probably play him a bit. I have a lot more interest in Bassett at the discount. Bassett's not a comfortable play. Like, he's been pretty average against lefties, but even though the Blue Jays are going nowhere, they give him a super long leash. He's like routinely over 90 pitches, occasionally topping 100, including last outing. Even if he gives up early damage, they're going to leave him out there, which, can go wrong. He can go full whoever and get negative 15 on you if he's still in the game in the third inning. But
full Latos.
I tend to think a longer leash is generally good. So no Seager, like you said, waters them down quite a bit. We're more worried about the lefties. I'm personally not worried about Josh Smith, Nate Lowe, Jonah Heim, or Leody Taveras. So, like I said, as a pivot from McGill, I think he's a fantastic play. And as of now, he's not really pulling a ton of ownership. And he's my second highest owned pitcher on the slate. It is what it is. I'm always over on Bassett for some reason. So here we go again.
Because he's always like 8K. He's always a good price. And the Rangers aren't a bad matchup.
It's an 8K guy. It's a fine matchup. Right.
Yeah, he's a Jag. He's out there. He's pitching. He's just hanging around. And the Rangers are not as good as they were supposed to be, nor are they healthy.
Kind of a slate. It's a slate full of Jags or like good pitchers in bad spots, like we'll get to with the Padres Astros games. I'm fine with it.
All right. Yeah, I'm okay with the price point wise. Absolutely. All right. Arizona gets a massive park upgrade at Coors Field. Obviously, Jordan Montgomery is not really fun to play, but the Rockies aren't very good. So you could play Jordan Montgomery at his. Never mind.
No, you can't.
What's his price? Oh, hey.
I don't know.
Is he limited or something? He's only 5.7K though.
The thing about him is he's fucking horrible. So.
Yes. But he's 5.7K. And the Rockies are also not that good. So, do I really want to play Jordan Montgomery?
He's limited. Like, he hasn't thrown more than 3 innings in each of his last 3 starts.
Yeah. So never mind. Yeah, I was gonna say. I was just asking, is he limited? Because if he's limited, then no, we're just not going to talk about it. So it is what it is. Rockies obviously look okay because, like you said, he's been limited. He hasn't been that good. It's Coors Field. They have a 175 ISO. I'm okay with them because it's Coors Field, but I would definitely be prioritizing the Diamondbacks. They face Ryan Feltner. He has issues against lefties, not only a 19% K rate, 170 ISO allowed. They just look at that. That's a whole lot of green, man. So they look good. 203 collective ISO. They do not strike out. They walk quite a bit. They get on base. They score runs, and they're playing at Coors Field. So they look like good chalk to me. Normally, I'm looking for reasons to fade Coors, but honestly, this slate does not have a lot of spots where I'm like really giddy to go out of my way. Like I do like the Athletics a lot. I'm with you on like the Royals. The Royals look good. There's obviously these leverage plays we're talking about, but I mean, I like Arizona. I want to pay up for them today. If you want to just get different, then ignore that and just fade Coors or play the other side of Coors. But fuck it, Diamondbacks look good.
Yeah, I'm looking through my Diamondback stacks to see how they're built, and some of them are double cheap, like McGill with Wicks, Wicks with Canning, Zach Wheeler, but Davis Martin is the SP2. And often the White Sox are the secondary stack with them, which
that's how you
makes a lot of sense on this. Like it's pretty easy to build an Arizona stack on this size slate and not be eating too much ownership. So yeah, like it's a good spot. Feldner hasn't been horrible. Like he's not a gas can. The power numbers against him are not egregious. But it's Coors. It's a great offense. They have Marte back. They have Walker back. Quite a few lefties he'll have to deal with. So clearly the top stack on the slate.
Yep.
I think Colorado is obviously less appealing because they're not as good, but Montgomery's been horrible all season long. I don't know what happened to him. He was a hero last year. And this year he's completely face planted. I think it's kind of more of a bullpen game though. And I never love picking on bullpen games. Montgomery might pitch a few innings and then come out, and then it's just a series of new arms coming in. So obviously you can still get the Colorado. Some of these lower in the order hitters, Jordan Beck, Aaron Schunk, may have pinch hit risk. For
look at this Jacob Stallings ISO. What the fuck?
Dude is living his best life in Colorado.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's had a Pittsburgh or Miami. So
bit of a breakout year for him, huh?
They do have power, like Toglia, Hunter Goodman, Tovar, pretty good power numbers against lefties. So yeah, like any team in Coors, you can always stack. Colorado is not exempt from that rule.
No, especially when they have a good matchup on their hands. All right, here we go. Game of the night. White Sox and Angels.
It really is the game of the night.
Well, it's crucial in what you're going to do with your lineup, I think. I agree with that. So Davis Martin is pitching against the Halos. The Halos obviously are not a lineup to fear. 138 collective ISO. They strike out almost 25% clip. So, I mean, I'm not really super interested in the Halos. I will say the park is good for offense. It has been all year. Davis Martin isn't somebody I'm really afraid of. So I think you can play the Angels. It's just not a priority for me. I don't think is Davis Martin going to pull ownership because he's cheap?
No.
I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised if he did because he's only 6.5K and the Angels aren't good. But yeah,
I just think it'll be Canning like in that range because it's the White Sox.
Yeah, so obviously it's even better for Canning on the other side. 124 ISO, good lord, 24% K rate. Canning had been better. He was really bad to start the year. Last game he had negative 4.5 fantasy points. Full Matt Lados going on there. Game before that, 26 fantasy points. A few games before that, 24. So he's had some ceiling games, and obviously he gets the White Sox. So I mean, I understand the ownership being on Canning a little bit as the SP2, only 6K. It's fine, but I'm kind of with you on just maybe leveraging that. Let me just take a peek real quick and see where the ownership is at. Canning, he's just one of those guys I was talking about that's just going to be like around 10 to 15% owned probably. And obviously the White Sox matchup is why he's carrying ownership. He's also cheap and he does have talent. So I don't think he's a bad play. It's just a kind of a both sides thing. I think getting the Canning as your SP2 is fine, but it's not something that I feel amazing about. So no. I think the White Sox is a secondary stack. I think they look decent. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think I'm playing everyone in this game, all sides of it.
Yeah,
I mentioned Martin being a fine SP2. Like he really hasn't been bad. He's not good historically, but so far this season, he's keeping the ball on the ground pretty well, especially against lefties. Strikeout stuff is like average. It's not pathetic. The Angels are pathetic. They have a bunch of guys in the lineup that you've never heard of. Gustavo Campero, Charles LeBlanc, Eric Wagaman, Nico Cavadas. It's like a full It's like when you're in a dynasty in your video game and you're like 10 years down the line and you don't know who anyone is because they're all usually computer generated. That's the Angels at this point. So I think Martin's playable. I think Canning's playable. Like, he's cheaper than everyone else. He's 6K flat. He's better than that historically. It is the White Sox, so I'm fine with him. I'm certainly fine stacking the Angels against Davis Martin because he's Davis Martin. And if Canning is going to be owned, which he will because he's cheap, and in this matchup, the White Sox are the natural leverage stack, just like they were last night against Reed Detmers. Not saying they're going to tee off on Griffin Canning the way they did on Reed Detmers, but you never know. Park, Yohan Moncada is apparently back, so there's at least one more guy we've heard of in this lineup tonight. So, yeah, I'm all in. These are my 2 highest owned stacks on the slate. Canning is one of my highest owned pitchers, 5th highest owned pitcher, and I think Martin is an okay differentiator.
It's not an MLB DFS build if one of us don't have interest in the White Sox.
Every fucking day we talk about the White Sox.
Well,
one way or the other.
There's usually a pitcher that people are going to use a little bit against them.
Every day against the White Sox, there's a pitcher that people are playing against.
We're talking about Griffin freaking Canning over here. So, yeah, that tells you all you need to know. All right, moving on here. Last 2 games tonight. First up, we got Astros taking on the Padres. Hunter Brown would normally look pretty appealing. Unfortunately, he is 9K, which the price isn't bad if it was a better matchup. Unfortunately, the Padres only strike out as 17% clip, and they are pretty healthy at this point. So, good pitcher. For a GPP flyer, I don't have a problem with it, but I just don't see the ceiling. On the other side, Astros take out Michael King. Same deal. He's 9.6, appropriately priced as far as his talent and production goes. Pitcher Park, too. So, if you want to play King and Brown, you can. But the Astros also don't strike out, and they have a lot of power with a 184 collective ISO. So these guys aren't really carrying that much ownership. They're just part of that group after Wheeler and Cole Reagans that is going to carry somewhere between 10 and 15% ownership or so. So you can play the pitchers, but I don't think there's enough leverage here. I don't think there's enough ceiling here. I think for tournaments you can do that, but I just don't see a path to these guys that makes me feel super good.
Yeah, this is probably the best real life game on the slate. Like 2 ace pitchers against 2 really good lineups. They both lineups have 17.1% strikeout rates against Rays on the year. Both hit for power. Both, get on base. The Astros walk quite a bit. Michael King has had some control issues in the past, and a little bit this season. It's just kind of a stay away from a fantasy standpoint. Like, I don't want to play offenses in Petco Park necessarily. I don't want to pick on Hunter Brown or Michael King. Like, you can stack these teams anytime, like Tatis, Machado, Cronenworth, Jordan Alvarez, a ton of talent. So I don't think you're dumb to stack them or to play the pitchers. It's just very far down the list of priorities on both sides.
Yep, agreed. All right, last game tonight, we have the Yankees visiting the Mariners. Luis Hill taking on Seattle. They do have almost a 26% collective whiff rate. They have a little bit of power, but I actually don't mind him here. He's coming in at 8.8K, so he's just coming right below Eovaldi, Hunter Brown, Michael King, those guys that we aren't really getting to anyways. He's not really a priority when you look at the other spend-ups that feel, considerably safer and have a better ceiling. But he's outside of Yankee Stadium. The Mariners do strike out. I think he's totally in play at 8.8K. Don't have a problem with him at all. On the Yankee side, Brian Wu is a good real-life pitcher. This is not the place I would use him. There's no ceiling here against the Yankees. They don't strike out that much usually. 24% whiff rate. I guess there's a little wiggle room there. But that's kind of that's spiked by Dominguez there with a 42% whiff rate. So I don't know how much I buy that. But they have obviously a lot of power. It's not going to be as appealing as it would be at Yankee Stadium because Seattle does not have a hitter's park. But it's still the Yankees who probably are going to be very, under-owned, very probably like completely unowned with a Coors slate and just facing a decent pitcher in a pitcher park. I actually like the Yankees as a completely overlooked stack.
Yeah, this one reminds me of the last game. Like, it's 2 good pitchers. It's 2 okay lineups. At least the Yankees are good, of course. The Mariners don't strike out quite as much as they did before they got Robles and Justin Turner in there, but still a high strikeout lineup. Hill has a ceiling, obviously. He could strike out 12 and completely shatter the slate. And for 8-8, I'm willing to take shots on that, but I'm not really getting to him as much as guys like Wheeler, Bassett, even Eovaldi I have more than Hill. Reagans, of course.
Gosh.
So, what?
Yeah, you're talking about a ceiling. He had a game like a month ago where he had 14 strikeouts.
Yeah, well,
right?
when he's on, he's amazing, and then he'll walk 8 in the next game and last.
Yeah, he hasn't had more than 7 strikeouts in like 6 games though. So yeah, you're right. He does have a ceiling, and the Mariners do strike out still. So like I said, I like him at that price point. I would prefer him over Brown, Eovaldi, and King. Like I don't see the reason to play them when he just looks better.
I just think he has a lower floor than Eovaldi, which is why I would lean Eovaldi. And I think the matchup is a bit better overall for run prevention for Eovaldi, with the Blue Jays being horrible outside of like one hitter these days.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree with that.
Brian Wu, not a lot of strikeout upside. His pitch count has improved over the last month. It is a big park downgrade for the Yankees, and Wu is 8,600, so I don't think you're unreasonable if you're playing him. He'll at least be in my pool. Yankees are an okay secondary stack, not a priority in this park. And then the Mariners, I have zero interest in.
Yeah, Wu faced the Yankees before, and he had 30 fantasy points, so it's not like he can't navigate this lineup. Also, his home away splits. I know that's always a noisy thing, but sometimes it's worth looking at because away he averages 13 fantasy points per game, and at home he averages 21.6. So clearly he's better.
It's a good park, so it's not.
Yeah,
it's not unreasonable.
For sure. Yeah. So that said, I'm with you. I think at 8.6K Wu, it's fine. It's definitely contrarian. But so are the Yankees. So I just think, and I agree, they're more of a secondary stack. I don't know if I want a full stack against Wu because he is a good pitcher. But the Yankees as like a 3-man stack, unowned to close out the night. I mean, you can do worse than that, especially if you're not playing Coors. Then you have the funds to go get Soto and Judge and that. So you can definitely do it. I'm going to be doing a little bit just because they're not going to be owned. All right. So before we wrap up here, let's have your number one pitcher that you're building around, and maybe your reasoning if you can offer that, and then your number one stack outside of Coors that you want to build around.
Number one pitcher is Wheeler. Not going out on the limb there, but fine enough spot against Milwaukee. He's just good. I trust him a bit more than Reagan's overall, so that would be my number one pitcher. Number one non-Coors stack. I don't want to say the White Sox or the Angels, so I would just say the Phillies against Montas.
It's a tough flag plant, isn't it?
The White Sox and Halos. Flag plant the White Sox or the Angels in good conscience. So I'll be playing them, but the Phillies sound a bit better, so I'll say the Phillies.
Hey, in all fairness, when we do these breakdowns, hopefully people listening can understand the difference between us breaking down the slate and looking at certain options and just offering what we want to do when in our lineups and like when we're building out with our optimizer and everything. Like we might just have a strategy for a given slate. Does not mean you cannot play a chalky offense or a chalky pitcher or what have you. That's just, we're just offering kind of both sides of it. As far as me, I'm going to go Cole Reagans. I don't think that's going out on a limb or anything. I just like him better. He's a little bit cheaper. I like the matchup a little bit better. And then my top stack is going to be Oakland. I love that game is going to be overlooked. And they have so much power that unowned Athletics are always pretty appealing to me. Not much leverage, but it will be very interesting if Wicks does end up carrying ownership, because then I would have a little bit of leverage to look forward to there. All right, that's going to do it for us. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. If it does, give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.